Oh, there you are. Come in, and let the evening stay outside where it belongs. It's a warm one tonight. No rain, no wind. Just that heavy, settled sort of warmth that comes down over the meadow on the stillest evenings, thick with crickets, the kind of night where even the river seems to be taking its time about getting anywhere. I had the door propped open a while before you came, only to listen to it. There's a whole chorus out there, if you stop long enough to hear it, and no two of them ever seem to agree on the tune. You've caught me at the tea as it happens, and I'll tell you, I never hurry this part. I know there are quicker ways to make a cup than the one I use. People have mentioned it to me over the years, usually while I'm in the very middle of it. But I've never quite seen the sense in rushing the one small ceremony of an evening that asks nothing of you except to wait for it. The kettle takes exactly as long as it takes, and I have, if nothing else, a great deal of time. Here, let me pour you one as well. Sit wherever suits you. There's no wrong chair in this place. They've all been sat in by someone who needed them. Comfortable? Good. Tonight's story came to me from a traveller, a woman who arrived here worn down to the very thread of herself, all hurry and no rest left in her. She sat right about where you're sitting, and it took her the better part of an hour just to stop watching the door. But she found her way back many times after that, over the years, and grew to know a certain place very well. Well enough to tell me not only about her own night there, but about a good many others who'd found their way to the same door. I liked what she gave me so much that I wrote all of it down before I could lose a word. It's called All the Time in the World, and I think, if your day has been anything like most people's, it might be exactly the one you need. So set the day down by the door with your coat. Let yourself go still. And listen. There is a café, nobody is quite sure where, that you can only find on the day you most need it. It doesn't sit on any street you could give directions to. It has no sign out front, no name anyone has ever learned, and it keeps no hours that a person could plan around. It simply waits, patient as a held breath, down a narrow lane between two buildings, a slip of cobblestones so slight you'd walk past it your whole life without once turning in. And then one day, on the day the world has finally worn you thin, you turn a corner, you've turned 1,000 times, and there the lane is, curling away out of sight, with a single warm gold window glowing at the far end of it. The people who find it are always the same sort, though they come in every shape. They are the ones who have run out of time, not run out of it forever, just run short the way everyone does, in the middle of a hurried stretch of living, when the days come faster than a person can properly meet them, and there never seems to be enough of anything, least of all quiet. Those are the ones the lane opens for. It seems to know them somehow. It lets them in. The door has a little bell above it, and painted on the glass in faded gold letters are the only words the café ever offers by way of a name. Come in and rest a while. And inside, everything goes quiet. Not silent, quiet. Whatever the weather is doing outside softens the moment the door closes, until the rain or the wind or the noise of the street sounds far off and harmless, the way things sound when you're already warm and already safe, and nothing can reach you anymore. The room is small and low, and full of golden lamplight, even when it's been grey as slate outside. There are deep, soft armchairs, the colour of old leather, and worn rugs layered 3 and 4 deep on the floor, and shelves of well-thumbed books, and always a fire going in the little hearth, well built up and burning steadily, whatever hour you happen to arrive. It smells of coffee and warm bread and wood smoke and something sweet underneath it all that nobody has ever quite been able to name. And behind a small wooden counter stands the woman who keeps it. Silver hair pinned up loosely, kind lines around her eyes, forever drying a cup with a cloth, and in no particular hurry about it. She is not a mysterious woman. That surprises people sometimes. They come in out of a lane that shouldn't exist and expect something grand and strange behind the counter, and instead they get a comfortable sort of person in an apron who looks up and says hello and asks whether they'd like coffee or tea, and gets on with it. That's rather the whole of her manner, in fact. She doesn't ask what's brought you. She doesn't look at you too long or too closely. She notices the ordinary things anybody would notice. A soaked coat, a face gone grey with tiredness, two people talking very fast, and she does the ordinary kindnesses that go with them. A towel, a warm mug in cold hands, a chair nearer the fire, and then no further fuss. Above the hearth there is an old clock, small, with a slow brass pendulum, and if you watch it, and most people do at least once, you'll notice it swings slower than any clock has a right to. Tick. And a long easy while later, tock. And if you keep watching it, your own breathing will begin, without your quite deciding to fall in with that slow and patient beat, and something in your shoulders that has been pulled tight for longer than you can remember will come, very quietly, undone. Because that is the secret of the place, and if you ask about it, the woman will tell you plainly. Though she'll tell you too that she doesn't understand it any better than you do. Time slows down in there. It cannot help it. Out in the rushing world, an hour gallops past before you've caught hold of it. But that hour can't get in through the door. Inside the café, an hour is as long as you need it to be. You can sit down for what feels like a whole slow golden weekend, days of nothing, days by the fire with nowhere to be, and step back out to find the world has lost only a handful of minutes it was never going to miss. It's just always done that, she'll say, with a shrug, drying another cup. I only make the coffee. Let me tell you about a few of the people it let in. The first was a woman worn thinner than anyone ought to be. Her days had no seams in them anywhere. No place where one thing ended and rest might have slipped in. She woke before light and worked past dark and filled every hour between with the needs of other people. And she was good at it, and she was proud of it, and she was so tired that sleep had stopped reaching her. She'd lie down at night, and her mind would keep going without her, ticking through everything undone, and she'd wake already exhausted, as though the night had happened to someone else. She found the lane on a grey afternoon, when she'd have told you, if you'd asked, that she couldn't spare a single minute, and turned down it anyway, because some worn-out part of her had been waiting a very long while for an excuse. The bell chimed. The woman behind the counter looked up from her cup and her cloth, took in the rain running off the poor soul's coat, and said, "Oh, you're drenched. Come and sit by the fire. There's a good chair going." "I can't stay," she said quickly. "I've too much to do. I only ducked in out of the—" "Stay till you've stopped dripping, at least," said the woman comfortably. "You'll catch a chill otherwise. Coffee or tea?" And somehow that was easier to argue with than kindness would have been, and she found herself in a deep chair by the fire, with a heavy blue mug warming her cold hands. And the woman went back to her cups and left her entirely alone. Which was, it turned out, exactly the thing. Nobody asked her anything. Nobody needed anything from her. Her eyes grew heavy almost at once, and for the first time in longer than she could name, she let them close. And she slept. Not the thin, ticking half-sleep of her own bed. Real sleep, deep and warm and dreamless, the kind that reaches all the way down into the hinges of a person. She sank into it, the way a stone sinks into still water, and she stayed there, and it went on and on. When at last she stirred, she felt as though whole days had passed, quiet days. A long, slow stretch of nothing, by a fire, with no one needing her and nothing left undone. She felt as you feel after a proper holiday somewhere green and far, put back together. Returned to herself. She sat up, alarmed all at once, the whole rushing world flooding back. How long was I? What time is it? I've been asleep for ages, by the feel of it, said the woman, without turning round. Go and look at the sky, though. It's never as bad as people expect. She went to the door and opened it. The afternoon was exactly where she'd left it. The light hadn't moved. She had slept what felt like a long and healing weekend, and out here, perhaps 10 minutes had gone by. She stood in the doorway a long, long moment. I did say, the woman offered from behind her, mildly, as though remarking on the weather. It does that. Never worked out why. You'll be welcome back, mind. The door's usually about if you know to look for the lane. The second time the lane opened, it opened for two. Two old friends who had been girls together long ago and then let a whole life come between them, the way you do. Not from any falling out, only from distance and busyness and the plain slow drift of years. And then, by the wildest chance, on a road neither had meant to be on, they'd found each other again. One evening. That was all they had. In the morning, their roads pulled hard in opposite directions, and neither could say when, or whether, they'd cross again. They had so much to say and so little night to say it in. They walked the streets talking fast, trying to pour years into hours, watching the light go with a kind of quiet urgency. And they turned, without noticing they'd turned, down a narrow lane toward a warm gold window. They came in mid-sentence and didn't stop, and the woman behind the counter waited until there was a gap, and then asked what they'd like. Coffee, said one. Two. We haven't long. We've only tonight. And then she's off south in the morning, and it's been 20 years. Then take the long table by the fire, said the woman. And don't let me interrupt. Nobody hurries in here. It won't be as short a night as you're thinking. They didn't much attend to that last part. They were already talking again. And what should have been one hurried evening became a whole slow weekend of one. They talked until talking turned to remembering, and remembering turned to laughing. And then, to the softer, quieter things you can only say to someone who knew you before you became whoever you are now. The fire was fed and fed again. The blue mugs were filled and refilled, set down at their elbows by a woman who never once lingered to listen. They told each other everything, the whole of the years they'd missed, unhurried, with time to circle back to the bits they'd skipped, time to sit in comfortable silence, time to simply look at each other's older faces and find the young ones still in there. Nobody came to move them along. No morning pressed at the windows. For as long as they needed, the goodbye stayed on the far side of the door and let them be. When at last they'd said it all, really all of it, right down to the bottom, they rose, steadier than they'd sat down, and stepped out into the lane. And the moon was almost exactly where it had been. The night had barely turned. They'd had days' worth of each other, and out here scarcely an hour of the evening had passed. So the goodbye, when it came gently. They'd had their fill. Nobody was left aching for one more word. Every word had been said in a warm gold room where there'd been all the time in the world to say them. They parted at the corner easy and full, the way you can only part from someone when you've truly had enough of their company first. And the third time, the last I'll tell you tonight, the lane opened for a tired young mother and her small, sleepy child. She loved that child more than anything in the world, and she almost never got to sit still with him. Her days were a blur of tending and carrying and doing, and the little one was growing so fast it startled her. She could feel the small years slipping through her fingers even as she lived them, all that softness and smallness racing past, while she was too busy to hold still and take it in. She wanted, more than anything, just one long, unhurried evening. One evening to simply be with him before he was suddenly and forever too big to be carried. She found the lane at dusk, the child heavy and drowsy on her hip. The woman behind the counter smiled at the sight of them, the way anybody smiles at a sleeping child. Oh, he's a good weight, that one. You'll want the deep chair in the corner. It's the best in the house for holding a sleeping thing. Shall I bring you something? Please, said the young mother, and then, surprising herself, because her arms ached, and the day had been long, and the woman had a comfortable sort of face, I just want to sit down with him. That's all I want. I never get to just sit with him, and he's getting so big. Well then, said the woman, sit with him. There's nothing else wanting doing in here. And she brought the coffee and set it down and went away again. So she sat, with her little one curled warm against her chest, and for what felt like a long golden weekend, she was given the one thing the world had never once handed her, time that didn't move. She held him while he dozed and felt every ounce of the weight of him. She hummed the old songs slowly, all the verses, with time to spare. She counted his eyelashes. She memorized the exact way his small hand curled around her thumb. She let the evening be as long as her love for him, which was to say nearly endless, and nothing at all interrupted it. No chore, no clock, no growing up, no tomorrow. And when she finally, reluctantly, carried him out into the lane, he no bigger than when she'd carried him in, the whole long weekend not having aged him a single day. A candle in a window across the way had burned down scarcely a finger's width. She'd had hours of him, days of him, and the world had spent only a few unmissed minutes on it. She stood there a while in the quiet, holding him, feeling as though she'd been given back something she'd thought was already slipping away. And then she went home, lighter than she'd come, carrying her sleeping boy. And every ordinary evening after that felt a little slower to her, because she knew now that if she ever truly needed it, there was a door. They all learned it, in the end, the ones the café let in. The same quiet thing, in their own different ways. That resting is never the same as wasting. That an hour given to being still is not an hour lost. That it is, very nearly, the only hour in a rushing sort of life that a person truly gets to keep. And that the world, for all its galloping, will always, always spare you the few small minutes it takes to remember that. The café is still there, of course. Down its lane, behind its gold window, the fire built up and the blue mugs waiting, and the slow brass clock keeping its own unhurried time above the hearth. The woman still dries her cups and looks up and asks, whether you'd like coffee or tea, and doesn't ask you anything else at all. And every so often, on a grey and hopeless sort of day, some tired soul who's run right out of time turns a corner they've turned 1,000 times. And there's the lane. And there's the window. And there's all the time in the world, waiting quietly inside, for anyone who finally stops long enough to step through the door. There. That's the café, and its lane, and its slow gold clock, and the woman who keeps it going for whoever comes in worn down to the thread of themselves. I've a great deal of fondness for her, I'll admit. Not for any grand reason. Only that she keeps a still room in a rushing world, and pours the coffee, and then has the good sense to leave people be. That last part is the hardest of the three. I've abandoned a cup or two of tea in my own time, though never, in my defence, because I was in a hurry. But mostly, I think it's the plain heart of the thing that stays with me. All those people, each needing a different sort of more rest, more time with someone dear, more of a good evening before it slipped away. And the café asking nothing of any of them except that they stop and sit and let the hour be long. And you needn't run anywhere at all now, dear insomniac. Whatever's been ticking and counting away in the back of your mind, waiting for you to see to it. You can let it be, just for tonight. It'll keep till morning. It always does. Let the fire do its slow work, and let this be your slow place, and let the hour be exactly as long as you need it to be. There's no wrong way to rest here. There never is. Sleep well.